Brought to you by the United States Marine Corps.
Okay, what's up, everyone? Welcome into the SCPI Southern Section Laxcast. I'm Sarah Chafee, joined as always by our lead analyst, Jim Loftus of MaxLax, the MaxLax OC, MaxLax LA, MaxLax SD. They're all over the place. Check them out at MaxLax, is it LA.com?
You can get to us through maxlaxla.com. That'll take you to the LA half of the LA portion of the site. But maxlaxoc.com is the primary homepage. But yeah, like you said, we're all over the place
for everything lacrosse. Jim, we have a lot to talk about, so we're just gonna dive right into it. What a week it was in lacrosse. Our podcast comes out on Wednesday, so we didn't have a chance to talk about the madness that went down last week. So we're gonna recap everything now, guys. Rightfully so. I guess we should start on the ladies' side of things because a huge storyline in girls lacrosse this week as number 2 St. Margaret's defeated our previous number 1 team, Mater Dei. Jim, that was a huge deal. Obviously, Mater Dei, they had won 36 in a row versus Southern Section teams, and they won back-to-back section titles. So we talked about it last week. We mentioned, what's it going to take for St. Margaret's to top Mater Dei? Can they do it? Mater Dei was sitting pretty at the number 1 spot. Jim, break it down for us.
Yeah, that was, I don't know if it was a surprise because St. Margaret's had been playing really well. But when you asked, what's it going to take, this is what it took. No one had done it. I think Beckman was the last team to beat Mater Dei, and that was in the playoffs in 2015. Mater Dei went, I think, undefeated in 2016, and their 5 losses last year, I believe, were all outside the section, San Diego or outside the area. So this was a first in quite a long time for Mater Dei to go down. And honestly, the way it started, I didn't get to see the game, but reading the report that was posted up on MaxLax OC, Mater Dei started out up 5-1 and looked like they were going to be in control and run away with it. But St. Margaret's figured something out and managed to come back. So it's good for them. It's a tremendous game.
That will definitely change our rankings, obviously, Jim. So that was the huge storyline. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through our top 10. But quickly on the boys' side of things, what are some big main storylines heading into this week?
Well, we've talked about similarly to can anyone beat Mater Dei? We've asked can anyone beat Foothill, and so far no one has. They're 10-0, but they're making a spring break trip up north, Northern California this week. So we could see Foothill get their first loss, but they might have to drive 5 hours to find someone who can do it until later on in the season when they'll match up against St. Margaret's. So.
All right, well, let's transition now, Jim, into our weekly SCPI top 10 rankings. We'll start with ladies first. At number 10, you'll see we have Los Alamitos, 9, Aliso Niguel, 8, San Clemente, 7, Trabuco Hills, 6, Santa Margarita, 5, Palos Verdes, 4, Redondo Union, 3, Mater Dei, 2, Foothill, and holding it down, our new number 1 is St. Margaret's. Well-deserved, as we mentioned. They beat Mater Dei. They also beat Tesoro. But break it down for us. Let's talk. We've seen some movement, but a few teams on the bubble. Everyone trying to get into that top 10. What are the biggest standouts to you this week, Jim?
Yeah, well, this top 10 is getting really crowded. It was really tough down at the 8, 9, 10 area. It was also tough up at the top. St. Margaret's deserves to move up. They beat Mater Dei. So the question is, does Mater Dei slip to just to 2, or do they drop to number 3? We put them at number 3. They do have 5 losses, although they're all teams outside the area, except for the one last week that we just talked about. And Foothill has beaten some really good local teams. So for right now, we decided to drop Mater Dei 2 spots to number 3. After that, it sort of falls in order. Redondo stays at number 4. Palos Verdes lost to Foothill, but actually somehow managed to move up in the rankings. But that's because as we're looking at the rest of the list, Trabuco Hills at 7 is our one new team to the top 10 this week. And Palos Verdes has a win over Santa Margarita. So we needed to try to keep Palos Verdes above Santa Margarita. Santa Margarita, so then Trabuco is number 7, excuse me, San Clemente, Aliso, and Los Al. Now, Oak Park from up here is the last team out. They would be number 11 if we went a little deeper. And in my mind, they beat Chaminade, which was number 2 or 3 up here all season long. Until last week, they lost to Redondo and Oak Park in the same week. And I wanted to jump Oak Park all the way up into the top 10, but they also have a previous loss to Los Al, which is sitting there at number 10 for us. So we couldn't put them ahead of Los Al. So it gets really odd as you're trying to compare schedules, and is a loss this week the same as a loss 2 weeks ago, or do you forgive a loss early in the season and say the team's getting better? So this is where we wound up. Chaminade dropped out after those 2 losses. They're still 9-2, and they're a very good team. So we'll see if they can climb back in. So we have Oak Park and Chaminade sitting right there at what would be 11 and 12. And congrats to Trabuco Hills. The thing about moving them in at number 7 is the record's only 4-4, but you look at those losses, 3 of them are to Foothill, St. Margaret's, and Santa Margarita, all 3 fairly highly ranked teams. So again, are those losses forgivable to a certain degree, and you believe that they're truly a good team even at 4-4? So we have them at number 7, and we'll see how they do this week and in the future.
And just a side note to all of our viewers, if you have any questions about the top 10, Jim and I are all yours. We love to talk with you. We love interaction. So if you have any questions about why your team sits where they're sitting or why they're not in the top 10 and you want an explanation, reach out to us on Twitter, or you can comment below in the comment section because we would love to hear from you, answer all of your questions. And with that said, let's move now to our boys' top 10. We'll start with number 10. You'll see we have San Clemente, 9 Oaks Christian, 8 we have Westlake, 7 Chaminade, 6 Harvard Westlake, 5 Palos Verdes, 4 Tesoro, 3 is Loyola, 2 St. Margaret's Episcopal, and number 1, still we have Foothill holding it down. So Jim, taking a look at our boys' top 10, what are your biggest takeaways from this week?
Well, it was actually kind of a quiet week on the boys' side. There's no new teams jumping in. There's nobody dropping out. We had some minor movement. Obviously, the top 3 stayed the same. I think what we did, we flip-flopped Tesoro and Palos Verdes. Tesoro's 8-0. Palos Verdes lost its 3rd game. It was down at La Costa Canyon, and I think it was 9-5 or 9-6, something in that range. So not a bad loss by any stretch. So we just flip-flopped those 2. We flip-flopped Chaminade and Westlake. Westlake was a team that, if you remember last week, we had a few questions about. They were undefeated, but they were hitting a stretch of their schedule where they were going to start getting tested. They played Agura, a league rival in the Marmani League, Friday night. And in the first half, Agura took them apart. It was 8-1 at halftime. Now, Westlake is a high-scoring team. Being held to 1 goal and a half was something. It was quite an accomplishment for the Chargers. But of course, Westlake came back. Came all the way back. Tied the game in the last 38 seconds, I think it was. Junior Nick Riley did it himself, ran through traffic, lost the ball, picked it up, threw it in. They managed to tie it. But on the ensuing faceoff, Agura wins it, and their LSM takes it the distance and scores the game winner with 25 seconds left. We'll talk about those guys a little bit later. But Westlake lost that game 10-9. 9-8, 1 goal loss. The numbers all blend after a while.
They do.
So when looking at the rankings, we dropped them a spot behind Chaminade. Again, just flip-flopping 8-7, 7-8. because Chaminade had an earlier 1-goal win over Agora. So that's just a little bit of the logic there. We'll see what Westlake does. Its schedule gets tougher. It's on break for now, but it comes back and I think they play Foothill in a couple weeks. They have 2 games with Oaks Christian in league coming up, and they get a rematch with Agora later on too. So we'll see what Westlake can do. Oaks holds steady there at number 9, and San Clemente holds steady at number 10. So on the bubble, then I have Agora. They're 6-3. They have this win over Westlake. And their losses are to Chaminade, as we mentioned, to Oaks Christian, but that one was in 3 overtimes a couple of weeks back. So they're losing some really close games to some really good teams. And then they lost to Harvard Westlake, which we have in here at number 6. So Agora's right there. Their losses are, forgivable. They're reasonable losses, and they're very close to crashing that top 10 party.
We'll see if Agora can sneak into the top 10 next week. Let's shift now our attention to game balls. You had mentioned a few really great performances. We talked about defensive players last week, but we have some this week. But we also have some nominees that were sent to us on Twitter by viewers, which we love. So please continue to reach out to us with game ball suggestions, because Jim and I, we can't be everywhere, and we would love to hear from you. We love to acknowledge great performances. So let's start on the boys' side of things, Jim. Who are you awarding game balls to this week?
Well, as I mentioned, let's start with the Agora defense. And this is actually a suggestion that came to us on Twitter. I was at that game, but I didn't have all the stats until someone sent them to me and made a pretty strong case for recognizing these guys. So goalie Zach Tripp, he's a junior, only made 6 saves, which is not a lot, but that's because his defense was not giving up very many shots in front of him. Created a lot of turnovers. Zach is a very athletic goalie. He came out of his crease and made a couple of steals, snagging passes out of the air, and then running out the clears by himself, running across midfield and handed it off to his attack. So he did an awful lot in that game that didn't involve necessarily making saves. But in front of him, the defense was amazing, led by senior defender LSM Cooper Isaacs. The numbers that were sent to me, he had 11 ground balls in that game, including the one on the faceoff that led to the game-winning goal with 25 seconds left. So he gets the ground ball, passes it to Sebastian Berndt, junior defender, who scores the game-winning goal in the final 30 seconds after Westlake had scratched and clawed its way back in to tie that game. Cooper, let's see, he also had the ensuing face-off, under 25 seconds, Westlake wins, gets possession, calls timeout, sets up, and Cooper Isaacs gets the takeaway. And I think it was actually Zach Tripp that picked up the ground ball and ran out the clock. So that defense, that's 3 guys there: Zach Tripp, Cooper Isaacs, Sebastian Berndt. That whole defense, though, was on fire, holding. Westlake had been averaging 17, 18 goals a game, and they held them to single digits, first time all season. So shout out to those guys.
Absolutely. Round of applause.
A couple other on the boys' side. One that came to us over Twitter, St. Margaret's junior attack Kevin Groninger had 2 goals and 2 assists in the win over Santa Margarita, and then blew up for 8 goals and 2 assists in their win over Faith Lutheran from Nevada, the out-of-state team that we talked a little bit about last week. So big week for Kevin. And then another defender, we'll throw a shout out to Justin Chang, the senior defender LSM from Beckman, who has signed with Notre Dame to play next year. He had 6 caused turnovers and 6 ground balls in a win over Mater Dei. And in a total in 3 games during the week, he had 10 caused turnovers and 14 ground balls. So he's well known for being all over the field and taking the ball away and bringing it back to his offense. So good for him.
Congratulations to all those game ball recipients. Certainly deserving, and love that defensive players holding it down. Let's transition to the ladies' side of things. We got a few recommendations as well here, Jim. So who gets the game balls this week?
Well, one recommendation we got came from up here in the LA area, and that was a game ball to Zella Bedoyan, junior at Birmingham High School, which in the LA top 20, I believe, sits about number 8 or thereabouts. Birmingham's a pretty solid team, but she had 8 goals and an assist in a 14-12 loss to Royal on Friday. Also had 8 ground balls in that game, so she's doing a lot of work. Earlier in the week, she had 3 goals and 2 assists in a win over El Camino. But that 8-goal performance brings her to 38 goals and 5 assists on the season in 9 games.
Wow!
So that 8 goals wasn't a fluke. She's a scorer. And then a couple other girls. We've got to go back to that St. Margaret's game. As I said, they started out down 5-1, I think, before turning it around. And 2 of the people that helped them turn it around were both juniors, Nikki Miles and Maddie Barcate, I believe is how you would pronounce it. Sorry if it's not Barcate. But each of them had 3 goals and 2 assists in that big win over Mater Dei. And then they also beat Tesoro last week. Miles had 3 goals and 3 assists in that game, and Barcade had 3 goals and 1 assist. So a solid week for both of them, especially in that producing that upset over Mater Dei. And the last game ball on the girls' side is a little bit of a special one. Kobe Richardson of Newport Harbor. She's been in the program 4 years, but this is her first year on varsity. She scored a few goals so far this season, 4 or 5, I think, is what I saw in our story on Max Lax OC. But she scored a free position game-winning goal with 11 seconds left, her only goal of the game, to beat Corona del Mar, their crosstown rival, in the Battle of the Bay. So you think about being in a program 4 years in your senior year, and you've got a chance to take down the crosstown rival with a free position with 11 seconds left. You got to nail it, and she did. So good for her.
What a cool moment for her. The Battle of the Bay, that gets intense too. And did you say that there was a story on her on Max Lax?
We have a story. We actually have video of the of that game-winning goal, and then a little bit of an interview with her afterward. When she said no sports memory like that for her. This was it. And senior year, what better way to end your career? Not that it's over. They've got a little ways to go still. But that was awesome.
That's cool, and you can check that out on Max Lax OC. So let's kind of fast forward now. We've dissected this past week. Now let's look ahead, Jim, as we usually do, and give the viewers a little bit of a preview of games they need to keep their eye on moving forward.
Sure. It's a little bit quiet. Spring break. We got the Easter weekend coming up, so some teams are taking some time off. Others are traveling. As we mentioned earlier, Foothill is going up north. But on the boys' side, another Las Vegas team, Palo Verde, is coming out to play Palos Verde, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be a lot of fun. It's Palo Verde versus Palo Verdes, all right? We got to get that straight. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So
I'm glad I'm not having to do any PA announcing on that one.
Yes.
The only thing worse would be if Palo Verde is also the Sea Kings, but I don't think they are.
Oh, let's hope not, man.
So we got Palo Verde at Palos Verdes on Tuesday. There was a Harvard Westlake game at Santa Margarita, but that's been postponed. Talked to the Harvard Westlake coach yesterday over text message, and he said they're looking at a mid-April rescheduled date for that one. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Two ranked teams or highly regarded teams anyway. Wednesday, we got Foothill up at St. Ignatius, like we mentioned. Chaminade from up here is going down to Anaheim to play Servite. So we'll have Max Lax will have somebody out at that game. Thursday, Foothill, still up in the Bay Area, play San Ramon Valley. St. Margaret's goes down to San Diego to play Poway. Poway isn't quite the dominant force that it has been, but that's just still a very solid program, and that should be a really good game. Palo Verde sticks around and plays at San Clemente on Thursday. And Palos Verdes, I'm not going to say these fast, Palos Verdes comes up north and takes on Agura. So that'll be a really good game too. Another chance for Agura to prove that it can really compete and maybe pop up into that top 10. They're right there on the bubble.
Right.
Chaminade on Friday, Chaminade, I guess, continues south and plays Santa Fe Christian down in La Jolla, where I believe Tom DeMeo is coaching, and he's the San Diego Prep Insider lacrosse analyst. So he'll have some stuff to talk about there. San Clemente is at Elisa Miguel also on Friday. Saturday, Tesoro at Corona del Mar. Look ahead to early next week, some really good ones. Foothill is at San Clemente. Remember, we have San Clemente. We're in our rankings still at number 10.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see how they do against Foothill, one of their first real tests of the season, and maybe prove that they deserve to rise up a little bit.
Right.
And next Tuesday, since we tape these or they air on Wednesdays, let's look at Tuesday because Loyola from here, our number 3 team in our poll, our rankings, goes down to play Coronado in San Diego. That'll be a big test for them. And St. Margaret's makes its trip up north and plays De La Salle up in Concord, California, in the Bay Area. So a lot of good stuff on the boys' side. LA, OC going to San Diego and vice versa, and then the trips up north. So a lot of ranked versus ranked coming up.
Right. And some of the girls' games to watch as well, Jim?
Yeah, the schedule's a little lighter on the girls' side. In fact, Tuesday night, the day we're taping this, but before you'll watch it, Santa Margarita and St. Margaret's play, and Newport Harbor and Los Alamitos play. So I believe we have reporters going to both of those games. So when you're listening to this on Wednesday, you ought to be able to find reports up on MaxLax OC as well on those 2 games. A big one, both in our rankings and in the LA area, is Wednesday, where Redondo Union is at Palos Verdes. They're 1 and 2 in the LA coaches poll, and they're 4 and 5 in our rankings here on the podcast. And it's a league matchup, so people down there in that South Bay area will be gearing up for that one. The rest of the weekend is pretty quiet with Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Next week, St. Margaret's is up at St. Ignatius in San Francisco. I'm not sure. I don't know much about the St. Ignatius girls program, so that would be interesting. And then Beckman is at Foothill down there in the OC. So there's a few, not quite as many as on the boys' side, but there's a few to watch.
Certainly an opportunity on both sides to get those teams on the bubble, potentially in the top 10 or creating some movement. So top 10's getting crowded. Everyone wants in, so we'll see how it goes. And for all things lacrosse, Jim, how can the people find you?
MaxLaxOC.com on the web. We are MaxLax Inc. or MaxLax LA on Twitter. I'm Jay Lofty on Twitter. You can send messages either place. We'll find them. We're on the Instagram. We haven't done the Snapchat yet though. But you ought to be able to find us anywhere you look.
Love that. And we just want to encourage you, Jim and I, but on behalf of both of us, we love hearing from you guys. Thank you to everyone who reached out on Twitter to us. Also, you can get in contact with us on the comment page below. However, Jim and I are both on Twitter. We have our names down below so you can get in contact with us. Send us your game ball suggestions. Also, pump us your questions. If you have any questions about why your team isn't in the top 10, why they're sitting at a certain spot in the top 10, why they're on the bubble, or any questions about storylines from the season, hit us up. We love hearing from you guys, and we're happy to answer any and all of your questions. So until next week, we'll see you then. Great week of lacrosse coming up, and happy Easter.
All right. Happy Easter to you too.
Thanks, Jim, again for joining us. We'll see you next week.